Greetings, one and all, and welcome to Lord of the Rings lore. In this entry, let's examine the race of Dwarves. The Dwarves are unique among the free peoples of Middle-earth, as they were not created by Eru Ilúvatar as Elves and Men were. Their creation was the result of a very different set of circumstances. While the previously mentioned races were part of Eru's design for Arda, the Dwarves were later incorporated into it. The Valar Aule was impatient for the awakening of Elves and Men. You see, he wanted to share his knowledge with them, as he was responsible for rock, metal, and crafting. He loved the making of all things, and was always eager to assist others and offer his advice in such matters. But his impatience got the better of him. In secret, he crafted the first of the dwarves. But these creations of his were not truly alive. They could move and act only if he directly willed them to do so, and would remain inert and lifeless if he directed his attention elsewhere. Aule could not grant them true life, as that power belonged to Eru alone. Eru himself confronted Aule for this transgression, and the Valar admitted his wrongdoing. And, with a heavy heart, he made ready to destroy his creations in repentance. But Eru saw that Aule did not want subjects or servants, but disciples to teach and care for. It was not out of vanity or malice that he had attempted to create life, but out of yearning to share his own talents. Thus, Eru granted the dwarves life, and incorporated them into his grand design. They would need to wait until the elves had awoken before they could awaken and make their way into the world. So Eru placed the first 7 dwarves, called the Fathers of the Dwarves, in various locations within the earth in Arda, where they would sleep until the elves had awoken. Thus, the dwarves became known as the adoptive children of Ilúvatar. These 7 fathers of the dwarves, after they awoke, would establish their own lines. Durin was the first of them, and founded the Longbeards in Gundabad, though he would eventually move them south and found Khazad-dûm, which would later be known as Moria. The Longbeards were the line that interacted most with the other races, and most characters seen in the novels are of their lineage. This is why they reference him in expressions, calling themselves Sons of Durin, or exclaiming Durin's beard in alarm. The other lines of dwarves were known as the Firebeards and Broadbeams, who lived in the Blue Mountains to the west, while the Ironfists, Stiffbeards, Blacklocks, and Stonefoots originated in the east. During the First Age, those dwarves that became criminals or performed wicked acts were cast out by their people and were known as petty dwarves. These petty dwarves were hunted almost to extinction by the elves, who knew not that they were a sapient race. They hastily ceased their actions when they discovered otherwise, but the damage had been done, as the petty dwarves had died out by the end of the First Age. Much like men, dwarves were split between fighting alongside the free peoples and serving the forces of Shadow, with those living in the east having fallen under its sway. Little is known of them, but they were described as being of an evil mind. As many know, the dwarves and elves have a tenuous relationship. This stems from the First Age, when the elf Thingol commissioned the dwarves of Nogrod to craft a pendant for one of the Silmarils, jewels beyond compare that contained some of the light of the 2 trees of Valinor, which were destroyed by Morgoth. The Silmarils were coveted by all, however, and the dwarves slew Thingol for it, leading to battle between the 2 races, which ever after soured their interactions. Despite this, the dwarves were known for being a key member of the Free Peoples, and often stood alongside elves and men in opposition to both Morgoth and Sauron. As Aule had first created them during the time in which Morgoth's monsters roamed Arda, He designed them to be robust. They are shorter than elves and men, though still standing taller than hobbits, at around 4 feet. They are difficult to injure and can endure hardships such as hunger or pain far more than the other races. They are known for being incredibly stubborn, though, and are steadfast in both loyalty and holding grudges. Like their creator, they excel at all forms of crafting, rivaling even the elves in the art. They live for much longer than men, though not forever. The 7 fathers of the dwarves would even return to life several times after their deaths. This was not through reincarnation, but their bodies would be kept by their kin, and they would return to life after several generations. Durin himself had 7 lives. They were considered underage until they reached 30 years old, and their lifespan averaged around 250 years, though some individuals lived for far longer. Dwalin lived to reach 340. Dwarves also did not suffer disease, and would only show signs of great age about a decade before their death. From birth, they had beards, and it was believed that they would die of shame if shaved. Dwarves reproduced slowly, as women only made up a third of their population, and some desired no husband, or wanted one that they could not have, and would settle for none other. Even dwarven women had beards, and they were so similar to their men in appearance to outsiders that they were often mistaken for them. Dwarves lived mostly underground, as they were wont to delve deep into the earth in search of resources with which to craft, such as metal and gems. Thus, they had little contact with animals and found men's relations with dogs strange and would not mount a horse willingly. They would also generally live far from large bodies of water, as they were afraid of the ocean. Also unique to dwarves was their language. It was known as Khuzdul, and was rarely taught to other races, and even then, the others had difficulty learning it. This is due to how it was created by Aule, and not by Eru Ilúvatar, as were the languages that the elves spoke, which were later taught to men. Only one phrase is commonly known by the other races. The battle cry, Baruch Khazad, Khazad I Menu. This translates to, Axes of the Dwarves. The dwarves are upon you. The dwarves' true names are in Khuzdul, but they refrain from using them while amongst other peoples. As such, all names that we the readers know the dwarven characters by are not their true names, but those they go by when abroad. Even their graves bear these names, rather than their true names, as evidenced by Balin's tomb in Moria. While the elves live forever in Arda, and men would pass beyond it after death, there is no confirmed fate for the dwarves. The dwarves believe that they travel to the halls of Mandos after death, though kept separate in other halls from the other races. They maintain that Aule gathers them, and that they will assist him in creating a new world after the last battle. During the Second Age, the dwarves of Khazad-dûm had a surprisingly close relation with the elves of Eregion. They were both societies devoted to crafting, and thus shared in their art. Celebrimbor, the elf that worked with Sauron, though he was unaware of the latter's identity, was known for his work with these dwarves. When presented with the 7 rings, the dwarves did not fall and become wraiths as men did. Aule had made them to endure, though they were made much greedier by them and became quick to anger. As such, the dwarves suffered the most out of the free peoples from orcs and dragons. Gundabad, where Durin first awoke, was a revered site for the dwarves, but was often held by orcs. They would take it back several times, but the orcs would always take it back from them in turn. Indeed, 4 of the 7 dwarf rings were destroyed by dragons as they conquered dwarven kingdoms. It wasn't all bad for the dwarves, though. After the War of the Ring, Gimli established a colony within the glittering caves behind Helm's Deep, and afterwards traveled with Legolas for many years, and the Elves and Dwarves, though destined to separate forever as the elves left for Valinor, left on good terms. It was through a combination of this, along with a good word from Galadriel, that Gimli was allowed to sail to Valinor with Legolas, the only dwarf to do so, where he would live the remainder of his life free from the pains that those who were not immortal would suffer. Durin himself would lead his people to reclaim Moria and return it into the city of Khazad-dûm for many generations. But what do you think about the dwarves of Tolkien's Legendarium? They are decidedly different from Elves and Men, even going as far back as their conception. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, leave a like on this video if you're so inclined, and subscribe to see more. I would like to thank you for watching, and may you all have a weapon in each hand.